Yara Hope Zavara is with us of Mother Trucker Yoga. She'll be explaining the connection between inflammation and trucking. Hope, good morning to you.
Good morning, Tim. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I am just trucking along. Happy to be here. It's a little chilly here in southeastern Wisconsin, but making the best of it.
Yeah, just stay warm, making the best of it. Our number is 615-292-6366 if you have a question for Hope. And if it's easier for you to submit that question via email, you can do that at tim@radionemo.com. You know, Hope, speaking of the weather, before we get to the inflammation, last week it was spring-like, almost like summer-like here down on the Gulf Coast and other places as well. But boy, we are reminded this week of winter again. So hopefully this will be the last week and we can get back to spring-like weather.
Amen. We've been having some same things going on here in the Midwest. We've had abnormally mild temperatures, and now we are back in an Arctic polar freeze. So I guess Mother Nature just doesn't know what she's going to be pulling out of her bag lately, but spring is on the horizon.
That's right. We can look forward to that. That's for sure. And another thing we can look forward to this morning, Hope, is learning the connection between inflammation and trucking. And I'm pretty sure everybody, all of our road dogs out there have their ears glued to the speakers waiting to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, let's dig in. Thinking about what to talk about today, this is something that I personally in my own health over the last year or so have been kind of looking into and just thinking, how can I improve my own well-being? I've been having some, small health issues, nothing major, but okay, what could be some issues that I'm not aware of that could be contributing to things like pain, maybe discomfort, stomach problems, things like that. And a friend of mine who's a naturopath suggests that I look into inflammation, and maybe having too much inflammation in my body could be causing some of the challenges I have. And wow, what a connection to so many health issues. And it really got me thinking a lot about the drivers that I've worked with and listened to and spoke to recently and over the years, and the connection between the trucking lifestyle and chronic inflammation. And so let's just kick it off first and foremost by, what is inflammation? Because there actually is a good level of inflammation. We actually want inflammation in our body at certain times because there is a natural healing process that happens with inflammation for a time period. So with inflammation, it's really when white blood cells, we have red blood cells, we have white blood cells. When white blood cells are rushing to an area of injury or infection, you sprain your knee, it's going to swell. That is a good thing because we want that part of the body to become healed, to not have re-injured itself, to not just stay, hurting for the rest of our lives. So we want that acute inflammation, which means that it's only for a short amount of period of time, to happen. You get a bee sting, your finger swells. That's acute inflammation. But what we want to get rid of in our body is chronic inflammation. That's bad inflammation. That's where we've had inflammation for a really long time. That's something like joint pain. Arthritis is long-term inflammation in the joints. Brain fog. Now they're saying that inflammation of the brain is actually what we're feeling as far as brain fog. Even Alzheimer's now, research is showing that Alzheimer's is really a disease of inflammation in the brain. Weight issues, belly fat are all signs of inflammation in the body. And over time, that chronic inflammation that many of us might be thinking, well, I have those things, can lead to stuff like heart disease. Even now for heart disease, arteries, having clogged arteries, plaque in the arteries, studies are showing that it's actually inflammation of the plaque in the arteries that's causing heart disease, not even the plaque alone. Diabetes, cancer, autoimmune disorders, now they're seeing more and more of this connection to chronic inflammation. And so that's really what inflammation is, and kind of the two types of inflammation that we want to look at. And then from there, we want to ask ourselves, it's not so much that you're inflamed, but it's why you're inflamed that matters, Tim.
Right. Good question. And I'm surprised even with the Alzheimer's and, with the link to inflammation and everything else that you just mentioned. But instead of putting pretty much a Band-Aid, you have to get to the why of it. So that's where you're going next with it. And this is really interesting. I have my ears glued as well.
Awesome. So when we're thinking about inflammation, and this is something I highly recommend everybody can do a little research on, and there's tons of great audiobooks. There's tons of great books that you can read that you can kind of immerse yourself in. I'll recommend a couple of them before the end of our time together, that if someone wants to pop on a new audiobook, this would be a great day and a good topic to do that. But again, we're talking about chronic inflammation, not acute inflammation. And chronic inflammation, it's like a fire inside your body that never turns off. And so when that fire in your body never turns off, like I said, we're experiencing things like weird out of the blue fatigue, brain fog, digestive disorders, things like SIBO, IBS, bloating, leaky gut now is becoming more and more common. People are seeing that so many of their health issues are connected to that. Waking, particularly around the belly, around the navel, that lower abdomen, is a connection between that and having high inflammation in the body. Even skin issues. Acne is actually inflammation of the skin. Eczema, inflammation of the skin. And so how do we get rid of that? What do we do to reduce this inflammation in our body so we can reduce pain, we can reduce some of the health issues we have that kind of came out of nowhere? How do I get rid of that? We want to start looking at a couple of different things. We talk a lot about diet, but there actually is a specific diet that one can follow if you're trying to reduce inflammation in the body. And I was shocked about this, Tim, that 60% of Americans, so we're talking about the U.S., Americans' calories come from sugar, and the number one part of that 60% is soda. I was blown away by that. Number one, sugar-induced caloric that we're taking in our body was coming from soda. And when we're eating high amounts of sugar and processed foods like starches, that just feeds the inflammation response in our body. So right then and there, where can I reduce the amount of sugar and the amount of processed starches, processed foods in my diet? I know we don't have to be perfect here, but you're going to see a dramatic difference the second you stop eating such a high amount of processed foods.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And sugar makes inflammation. It causes inflammation rather. And with the soda, and I have a sister that pretty much addicted to sodas, and I've been talking to her for years, not only with the sugar, but also if you're trying to lose weight, it's hard to lose weight if you're constantly drinking sodas as well.
Absolutely, which leads to the second thing when we're talking about diet. And I never really thought about this until now. I'm a little bit older, but fiber, getting enough fiber actually is directly linked to lowering inflammation in the body, but also there's a big link to weight loss. And so most Americans are not getting enough fiber in their diet. And the way to just kind of gauge that without counting fiber on the back of a package is ask yourself, how much of my food comes from a package? How much of my food is fried? And how much of my food is in its natural state? And if you're on the latter, you're probably getting a really low fiber diet. And for men, it's like 38-ish grams, give or take. But women, it's 28. And so that, when you think about it, it's like, wow, that's actually a substantial amount of fiber. So drivers are also struggling with things like constipation, bloating, stomach issues. A big part of that could be you're lacking fiber in your diet because fiber binds. Fiber cleans out your intestines. Fiber is going to get rid of all of that bacteria, all of that stuff that's kind of leaking and lurching around in your gut, and it's going to move it through the body. And so as we age, this is one of the things that we see in the standard American diet that we're heavily lacking. I believe the stats like 95%, 98%, something like that. Americans don't get enough fiber. That's pretty much our entire country does not get enough fiber. So we're not eating real foods.
Our number is 615-292-6366. You can also submit your question via email at tim@radionemo.com. I do have an email for you, Hope, and he wants to know, he's a long distance driver. He says, I stay out generally 3 to 4 months at a time. I have a lot of swelling around my joints. Just wanted to know if there's any type of diet that I would need to pay particular attention to be able to reduce my swelling.
Awesome. Well, let's dig right in. There is a diet called the inflammation diet. And so we are focused on eating things like high fiber foods, phytonutrients. That's basically real fruits and vegetables, not prepackaged, not canned. So fresh fruits and vegetables, healthy oils. So we want to make sure we're getting enough fats and enough oils. Sometimes people can get a little scared of eating like oils or fats because they think, oh, it's going to make me fat, but we need that to lubricate our body, lubricate our joints. So omega rich. So you want to be looking for how much omegas, 3s, not 6s. So 6s are kind of like the bad fats, the bad oils. We want those omega 3s. And so that's salmon, sardines. Sardines are great because you can buy them prepackaged and open them up and they're just like a whole little fish and they're packed with nutrients. Gut-friendly fermented foods. That's going to be your sauerkrauts, your kimchi, your yogurt. I would even look for things like a prebiotic yogurt. A lot of times now they're adding that prebiotic in, which is going to be really good for your gut flora, which means it's going to help with inflammation of the gut. And essentially whole unprocessed foods. And so I always recommend to drivers, it can be difficult when you're living over the road or even if you're just a day cab driver to be getting everything that you need. And so even if you improve 50% of your diet, I assure you, you are going to notice such a difference. And you're talking about your joints hurting. I didn't necessarily have swelling around my joints, but my joints were hurting. I'm only in my 40s and I was like, man, like what's going on? And I really focused into an inflammation focused diet. And within a few weeks, I noticed a huge difference. And so I try to eat healthy, but there was clearly something lingering in my body and just focusing more on this. And there's tons of books, tons of podcasts. So definitely going to be super easy for you to read up and educate up on an inflammation focused diet, but also simple things like turmeric. You can buy turmeric in capsules now. I add turmeric to all my food. Everything in our house when we eat is yellow now. But it's kind of tasteless. So turmeric is great. You can never get too much turmeric in your diet. Ginger, garlic, inflammation diet loves herbs. Rosemary, what's another one? Oh, clove. Clove is great. And these are spices that you could travel with and just start adding to your diet. Add a little clove and cinnamon into your coffee or into your tea. Add turmeric on top of your salmon. Add ginger and garlic to some of your meal dishes. Like these are easy herbs that are going to have a really positive side effect to your all-over health and well-being that you are going to start not only seeing a difference, but the one thing I love about trying to focus on reducing inflammation in your body, no matter who you are, is you're going to feel a difference. And the two big ones for me was body aches and brain fog. That made a significant impact on me almost immediately. And so I have a feeling, Ryder, that this is going to make a big difference for you as well.
And that was another thing, Hope, that I was blown away by, the connection between inflammation and brain fog. I had no earthly idea.
Yeah, when I'm trying to think of what the doctor's name is. She wrote, I'll look up the book before we left, but she wrote a really great book. I think it's called On Fire. and her name is Megan. She talks a lot about how the body is on fire, and where there's fire, there's flames, and where there's flames, there's inflammation. And they're more and more they're seeing that Alzheimer's, brain fog, any type of like brain type issue, it's swelling, it's inflammation, that those nerves are on fire, and we want to put the fire out. And I just love her visuals and analogies. And that really stuck with me, that, man, when I'm getting that brain fog, I got to start looking at, where is there inflammation going on in my body and in my life. But other factors that can contribute to inflammation, which is why this is so pertinent for truck drivers, is long periods of sitting. So even sitting for just a few hours can increase inflammation because it reduces circulation. That circulation and inflammation connection is really big. And so for you drivers listening, even simple things like pumping your foot up and down, lifting your legs up and down, pelvic tilting, reaching your arms up or overhead, rolling your shoulders. These might seem so elementary and silly, but we need to keep that circulation going so we can keep inflammation at bay, because long-term sitting, there is a big correlation there. Lack of exercise as well. Just 20 to 30 minutes of movement can help reduce inflammation. So that doesn't have to be every day. That can just be you getting out and going for a walk, doing a couple squats, doing a little bit of mother trucker yoga. Whatever it is, you have to get your body moving, especially if you're dealing with joint stuff. We want to lubricate the joints. We want to keep those joint capsules nice and lubricated and hydrated. Aside from inflammation, as we age and we stop moving, it's like a dried up bungee cord or a dried up rubber band that you find that's like 30 years old in your desk, and you're like, what the heck? And it's all dehydrated and kind of shriveled up, and then you pull on it and snaps. That's kind of our joints. And so if we don't move them, we don't lubricate them, inflammation is going to get us. So we're finding that, that dehydrated joint, old stiff joints is going to end up feeling like it's wearing on us. And then the last one, which I thought was interesting, Tim, and there's a lot of talk and buzz about this in the health industry already, is sleep. Sleep deprivation is directly linked to high levels of inflammation in the body. And so trying to prioritize sleep the best you can as a driver, that can be things like, can I get the room really dark? Do I need a sleep mask? Do I need a sound machine? Not eating a heavy meal before you go to bed. Anything you do to try to have a longer period of time where you're not waking up is going to help reduce inflammation markers.
Yeah, I read an article on that very same thing not long ago about the lack of sleep and inflammation. And I know it's pretty tough as well, not only, for the truck drivers as a whole, but even with the irregular sleep habits that they're forced to have, because they may run out of hours today, at 10 p.m., and then they get their sleep, overnight. But tomorrow or one day next week, they may run out of hours at 3 p.m. and have to be forced to try to sleep during the daylight hours. So you're right, making it dark as possible. The irregular sleep habits on top of that probably make the problem worse, doesn't it, in terms of the inflammation by not being able to sleep enough?
Oh, absolutely. An inconsistent sleep is it takes a toll on the body. And so I feel for all of you drivers, and obviously our conversations are always for entertainment purposes only, but I would highly encourage, if you're listening, some natural sources that you can look to help with sleep, taking magnesium at night, ashwagandha, which is an herb that's really helped me a lot, things like that. Again, not eating a heavy meal before you go to bed, as tempting as it might be, but sticking to more of a protein-focused snack or smaller meal, so your body doesn't have to choose between digesting your food or resting and repairing your body. And that can be part of that, like, wake-up periods as your insulin is spiking. And your body is like, oh, I got to digest my food now. And so it's waking you up. It's disrupting your sleep cycle. And so wanting to choose a little bit more wisely on what you eat before you sleep, especially if your sleep is irregular because of the type of driver you are, we're not looking for perfection here. We're also not looking for excuses to say, well, I'm this kind of a driver, or this is my kind of lifestyle, or this is this, but rather looking for the gaps and saying, what can I do? You know, I think this might be an issue for me. If 95% of Americans are struggling with this, like, I probably am in this category. I have some health stuff already going on. I'm going to pay more attention to the fact that I might be dealing with some inflammation and just see what happens. Again, we're not looking for perfection. Other things that we could possibly look to that could be causing inflammation can be what we call environmental toxins. And those can be things like heavy metals, which are found often in foods and personal care products. So more and more I stress to people, please look at the backs of your labels to anything you put in and on your body. Now there's a big push for what we call microplastics. And that can be like your Tupperwares, especially like throwaway Tupperware. I think, Tim, like if you get Chinese food, like that type of Tupperware with the black bottom and the clear top, that's called black microplastic, which is actually the worst type of microplastic. And especially when it's heated, it leaches right into your food and into your bloodstream. And so just trying to reduce the amount of microplastics that we can to help us to heal our bodies and be able to feel better. So really looking at some of those things as well. If you feel like, well, my diet's actually pretty good, you know, how is your food being packaged? You know, what are you eating with Teflon pans, things like that? A lot of us know these things, but we think, oh, it's not affecting me. And then all of a sudden we have these kind of mysterious health things going on and we're not making those connections. And so I can't emphasize that enough. I also learned, which I thought like, wow, I did not know this. There's actually some tests that you can do too at the doctor. You can ask for food sensitivity tests. It's called an IAGE, IAGE. It's actually a blood panel that you can do, and they can test for inflammation in your body. They can't necessarily say where it's coming from, but they can get a reading and say, oh, you do have inflammation in the body. So we are starting to see more and more things coming to the surface in both Western and Eastern medicine that can directly connect inflammation to some of our health issues. So that was really exciting to me when I heard that. I thought, oh my gosh, finally, we're kind of getting caught up here. And lastly, for those of you listening, this is not an excuse for you to run for the Advil or run for the Tylenol, because those are going to be artificial ways for you to reduce inflammation. And taking something like that is much more for that acute inflammation, like I sprained my knee or I twisted my ankle, whatever that might be. That's going to be more focused on the acute inflammation. And even then, you do want inflammation. It helps create healing. What we don't want is that chronic. And taking something like Advil or Tylenol is not good for our stomach lining. It can really create challenges for digestion. Our kidneys and liver are not going to like you, yours particularly, not necessarily mine. And so that's not a reason to just start popping that, because you're going to create a whole bunch of other problems for yourself in the long haul.
Well, Hope, thank you so much for this very pertinent information that you've given us. And tell us real quick how they can get in touch with you and find out what you have to offer.
Absolutely. You can come over and check me out at mothertruckeryoga.com and any of my social handles, Mother Trucker Yoga. Those of you listening, the book I was talking about is called Body on Fire by Megan Argwell. You can get it on audiobook, and absolutely great.